Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast with Mike and Mike. Sales is a thinking process. This podcast will help you learn about what works in sales, how to hone your skills, and increase your success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry. Of course, I'm here with Mike Connor and Mike Simmons. Mike and Mike, I have something I want to bring forward. I'm on Donald Miller's email list, and he talked about switching rental car companies recently. And the reason he gave is that when he flew to the airport and used the rental car company, no matter what city he was in, they asked the same questions, just right off the script. Where are you from? Here for business and pleasure? How's the weather? But that sort of thing. So I thought of you guys. Where's the line between having a script to help you out and being too scripted?
That is a classic example. And I'm wondering if I know you didn't throw a name out there of the rental car company, but it's a good example. And this is off the top of my head, but unfortunately, I travel quite a bit and I rent a lot of cars, and I don't really have one in particular that I use because I'm a little bit of a price shopper. But I can tell you that there's two that I can think of off the top of my head. One that fits your description, where they have a script and they have these are the three questions you ask, and they don't really listen. They just have to ask the questions. So they really don't care what you tell them. But I also know of another rental car company, and I guess I won't drop that name either, but they're known for having a very, very good, efficient, and respected onboarding process where they hire a lot of college graduates. They have a great onboarding program. It's basically a development program that I know as a sales leader, when I see that car agency program on the resume, I know they've had some pretty good foundational training. So we won't throw any names out there for either of the parties, but there's a difference in the way that the latter rental car company, when you greet that person, my expectation is I'm not going to be asked the same three questions, but I'm going to be greeted by somebody that is actually engaging in a conversation. And so it's not always the same questions, but there is a difference. And now, if you fast forward a little bit and think about how does that equate to our sales experience? And where I usually hear it come up is, do you give your sales reps scripts? And the word script to me it just drives me nuts, because I think scripts for the purpose of communicating with a client are absolutely terrible.
The first job this wasn't the first job I was fired from. I was fired from a paper route once, which was just brutal.
How do you get fired from a paper route?
Inability to execute.
You're the first person that I've heard of.
I was delivering papers, and this is when we lived out on Long Island. Blizzard, snow. I'm pedaling around on my knockoff BMX bike, whatever it was, and I did not make good on my expectations. It was a lesson learned that you need to do your job, and in that instance, I did not do my job, and I lost it. But the next time that I was let go was when I worked for a telemarketing company, and it was a mutual let go kind of thing.
That's what they told you.
Yeah, that is what they told me. There really wasn't an option, but it was. So they had the script, and I was selling, like, I forget what the brand was. It was some kind of book, book thing, where you're telemarketing. The dialer would go on every a couple of minutes. You get click, and you've got somebody on the phone. The same calls that we all get at dinner time, where you politely say, "Please, I'm on the do not call list. Please remove me from your list." Well, so going through. And I wasn't gaining as much traction as I probably would have liked to way back then. So I started to go off script, and my numbers went through the roof. I was talking to the traditional person who would answer the phone at night. So someone probably in Mike's demographic. And if you go to his LinkedIn page, you'll know what I'm talking about. But when I'd get a hold of them and I'd talk to them about how they could use these as a gift for their kids for Christmas or their grandkids for Christmas. Anyhow, I'm off script, but my numbers, my conversion rates on people who would accept to have that mailing sent to them was much higher. And so I had a manager say, it's great that your numbers are up, but you can't do this. You have to go on the script. So I went back to the script, started to fail again, then modified back to my other approach. Numbers started to come up, and we agreed that wasn't the right place for me. I wasn't able to stress my creativity in a telemarketing role. So from there, I went on to UPS and went on to bigger and better things. But Yeah, it's the script thing is one of those things that just drives me nuts. And the feeling I get when people start talking about this is, would you like fries with that? That's a scripted question. And the other one is, would you like floor mats? And Mike, you worked in a car dealership, so you know that about all the different add-ons that go on in those scenarios. When you're asking the same question over and over and over again, and it's not in the context of what's important to the person you're reading or you're working with, then you've really got to ask yourself, am I asking this question because it's part of a process that I've been told I need to do, or is it because it's something that's making the customer's experience better?
I have this experience every time I get my hair cut. And in fact, I sometimes I defer getting my hair cut, and I go to the same place because they do a reasonable job and it's pretty quick. I can get it in and out, on my lunch hour or whatever. But what drives me nuts, what I like about it is it's a sports themed place. And so I can watch ESPN or I can watch a game or whatever. They have it right there on your little personal TV, which is great, except for they've been trained to ask you about 13 different questions while you're enjoying your haircut. And the reason I go there is because I want to watch the sports. But what I get is, oh, so where are you from originally? Where were you born? Where do you work? Oh, that sounds like an awesome job. What do you do? It's literally the same 10 questions every time. And I think they've gotten to know now where I very politely just said, one of the reasons I come here is because I like to watch the sports. And I work in an office where people are asking me questions all day long. And when I get home, my wife and my 3 daughters and my grandson, they have questions for me all night long. So this is just my 35 minutes of sanity where nobody asks me questions and I just watch football. So if we could just respect that boundary, it'll be great. Keep coming back. I'll be your customer for life, but you're off the hook. You don't have to ask me where I'm from or where I work.
I'm confused. Is this a haircut or a mani-pedi?
No, that's the haircut. The mani-pedi, I have a great relationship with her. We talk for hours.
So and this is the difference one of the differences between Mike and I. I would get to the point where I bring an index card with the answer to each of their questions. And as I walk in, I just hand it to them. Where, Mike was nice enough to give him a little bit of backstory and tell him why it's important why he's looking for this break. So see, yin and yang.
Yep.
When a organization puts in a script, what usually is the reason for it? Is it because it works, or is it because they don't fully trust their people to do the right thing or ask the right thing?
It's an awesome question. I would like to think it's because they have some data that tells them it works. Many times those scripts are put together in some kind of think tank. It might be with people who used to sell directly and have now moved into a sales leadership role, but are so far disconnected from what happens at the customer level that they apply what they did before and forget about all the negative things that happened in that scenario. But I don't know. I think on their side, on the leadership side, it's about how can I make this process more efficient? How can I move through more volume on my side? How can I get to a point where I've got a higher level of predictable revenue coming into the organization? So I think it is with the best intentions, but I think there are some gaps that they miss when they roll that process out.
Well, and trust is a piece of it. I mean, you look at marketing communication, written communication, how phone calls are conducted, how conversations are constructed. If you don't give people a certain amount of structure around that call, in other words, just have your sales reps just start writing their own emails, just completely without any background, or just start making howdy calls and calling people and to see if you can connect with people. There's a lot of room for error there. And so I think some of it is, hey, it's just easier if I tell them what to say. If they can learn that and internalize it, it'll flow like butter because, like Mike said, we had our marketing person and we had our, all these different people crafted the perfect message with the compelling value proposition. And if you say the following, these are the responses you'll get. And based on those responses, here's how you should answer the questions. Like that call flow has been mapped out in the perfect client scenario. The problem is those scenarios don't usually play out on the client side exactly the way you've mapped them. So now you've put the sales rep at a disadvantage because they're expecting to hear something predetermined from the client. That's not exactly what they heard, but that sounds pretty close to response number 3. And so that's the sort of rut you put people in when you have it that rigid. Now, I would say I don't want to come off as sounding like we don't believe in call planning, that we don't believe in having guideposts and a strategy. you absolutely want to have those components. You want to know the purpose of the call, who you're talking to, what the agenda is, what questions you'd want to ask, anticipating what some of the answers might be. Yes, you want to do all of that, but you want to give yourself room to think, and you want to give your, me as a sales leader, I want to give the people that I have talking to customers every day the opportunity to think. And with that, you give them some material to work with that they can learn through training, that they learn through time, through different engagements. That's all stuff that you learn over time. But the other thing that we really help people understand is you don't have to know the answer to everything. And I think one of the important things that you instill in a salesperson that's maybe just starting out or maybe not, maybe they've been at it a while, but the idea that you can call a timeout, you could say, I don't know the answer to that, and that's okay. I think too many times salespeople feel the pressure of, I better have an answer, I better give them that answer and keep this conversation going. They don't have the wherewithal to take a timeout.
I don't know is one of probably the most frequent phrases I use in a conversation. And it's usually followed with, I don't know, but let me get with someone who does, and I'll follow back up with you. And that pause can be used both because you truly don't know the answer or because you just need to pump the brakes a little bit, slow the process down. I've been in those situations where things are just moving a little bit too fast. And because of experience, I know that if things are moving too fast, more often than not, I've missed something. There's some piece of information that I've missed in the process. And by being able to say, I don't know, or let me get back to you, let me work on that, that gives me that chance to kind of reflect, figure out, have I gathered all the information that I need, and then come bring things back together. But one of the questions that comes up for me, though, as we've been talking about this, is there are scenarios where a script just makes sense. Where, for me, I think one of them is a checklist that the pilot and the co-pilot go through when they do pre-flight. That is a script that has very good intentions. It's manufactured to make sure that they don't miss an extremely important detail. And in that scenario, you've got a lot of people who are counting on that. So, what are some of those other examples where in a sales process, a script might make sense?
Mike, earlier when you mentioned, do you want fries with that as part of a script? And I thought, in that case, there have been times where I didn't know I wanted fries until they asked me.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
I could tell you if it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it, and they wouldn't have continued to do it for years and years. They have data that says if you ask them if they want fries with that, you're going to get a successful close X% of the time.
Yeah, 75% of the people say yes.
Yeah, but it's all relative, right? I mean, did that make a big impact on your day if they asked you if you wanted fries with that? Okay, probably not. Are fries tasty? Absolutely. Did they seem like a good idea at the time and you didn't even realize it? Sure. But what was the net impact at the end of the day? I mean, it's a transaction. So I think the closer you are to a transaction kind of business where it's just this thing you're not even going to give a second thought to, then that's fine. Train the people to ask those questions or to get that immediate response. It's really not going to have an impact on a person's life unless you do it too many times over time. Then you've got a whole other problem to deal with. But with getting too many of those fries, and if you want to be known, so I guess I would look at it another way. If you're dealing in a transaction type business like that, where you're really not adding value, you're facilitating a transaction, absolutely. But I would say that if you have a title as account executive or anybody in a B2B sales organization, I seriously doubt that you want to be known as a transaction kind of person, that you just read a script and take orders, because that to me isn't where you're really not adding any value. You're facilitating a transaction. And so, yeah, there are times when it might make sense, but it's probably not the kind of sales that we're usually part of.
I think the thing that frustrates me most about scripts, and I may have said it earlier and I'm just repeating myself, but it's how they take away they remove the creative process. They remove that opportunity for the rep to imprint their experience, their background, their personality on the sales process. And if you remove that, then why not just do all of this with a machine? Put people through a lead form, lead process, and do it with a machine.
I feel a script also makes all of the sales professionals and the customers. You're basically saying both sides are the same. Because if everyone doing the sale has to follow a script, you're saying they're all identical.
Yep.
And if you ask every customer the exact same questions, you're saying there's no difference between customers either.
Yep. And you're removing the ability to build, ask reflective questions. And when you hear things, it's not just it shouldn't mentally be I check the box. Okay, yes, they want fries. Maybe the follow up to, yes, I want fries. Can I include some ketchup with that? I don't know, but it's, I think you've also got to go back and ask that question. Why are you trying to get that specific piece of information, and how is that going to help you present your solution in the context of what's important to the customer? And if it isn't, then maybe it's not the right question to be asking.
Well, and it's how you ask as well. So it's very easy. I'll use the qualification process in the sales process. There's a lot of different flavors, but if you boiled it down across how anybody in sales would define qualification, generally there's a component of understanding the business problem. There's a component of understanding if there's budget availability or funding to invest in a potential solution. And then there's usually questions around who makes the decisions and what is the decision-making process. So those are pretty common attributes of a qualification process. And so that can sound like two different things. That can sound like I'm running through the qualification gauntlet, which, I still have this happen, where they ask very directly, do you have budget for this? Well, there's a direct way to ask that question, or they'll ask the straight question of, are you the person that makes the decision on this, or is there somebody else that I should be talking to? Very direct ways to check the box and say, yep, I asked those questions. I got the answers. It's now qualified. Now let me hand it off. Or you could have an engaging conversation, and through the exchange back and forth, there's more tactful ways or there's more appropriate ways to have those same answers surface through conversation. And it's usually an engaging conversation, not I'm going to hit you with 3 questions right now to see how you score in my CRM so I can decide whether or not you're qualified. So there's a difference there. Same objective, same end goal, same way to keep things moving forward. 2 totally different approaches in how you handle that.
Well, and how many times have those questions been asked only to find out that the person you're dealing with doesn't have budget, doesn't control the decision, but they answered those questions the way that you wanted them to on the front end. So they said, yes. I mean, that's part of their role. I mean, one of their roles is to play the role of a gatekeeper inside the organization. Maybe they're just doing the initial research and they're helping to protect the real decision maker inside the organization so that their time is only used for the top 3 that make it through whatever the selection process is. So the other thing I think we should all think about when it comes to scripted questions, if you're working off of a script, I would imagine that your customers know what that script is and are being asked the same questions over and over again by each person that they've engaged with in this same process. So they may be gaming the script, and you're just falling into that trap.
Well, do you have any final thoughts to add about using a script or having a script in place without feeling scripted?
The only thing that I would just add back in, and I think we've covered this, but I just want to end on it. There is a time and a place for providing these guideposts that we talk about. There should always be an objective, and there should be a way that you help move an opportunity from where it is today to where it needs to be tomorrow. And there's a process that you're going to follow. Many times from a rep perspective, that may seem like it's scripted, but the day-to-day interaction that you're having with the customer isn't scripted. It shouldn't be scripted. So the process and the wider scale should be mapped out where you follow and go through each of these stages, but that day-to-day interaction should still be very personal with your customer.
Yeah, the way I sum that up is I say, is your process telling you what to do, or is your process helping you think about what you should be doing? And if you can keep that in mind, I think that's what opens up the ability to be creative, to think, and to really treat every opportunity and every individual you're talking with, on a very unique basis.
Well, thank you, Mike and Mike. This has been another great episode. And if you have a question you would like Mike and Mike to answer on the show, please feel free to send it in. You can reach us at hello@catalystsale, or You can find us on Twitter @Catalyst Sale or LinkedIn. Thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.